Of course, Filip is right here. Of course. Guys, come on,
they're
give
more
them a round of applause.
All
Hi,
right.
how are you? Yes, a bit stronger than this. Thank you. The stage is yours, guys.
All right, well, thank you for being more ready than me, and we'll jump right into it. So let's just start at the end and introduce yourselves very quickly. We just have a brief period of time up here, and then we'll jump right into the conversation.
Good. Hello, everybody. My name is Filip. Is it working? Good.
I think so.
So I come from Mordor, which means commercial banking, and in my career, I have done a number of fintech startups. Most of you never heard about them because we would never exit as UniCredit from these companies, and they are some of the most profitable operations in Bulgaria, namely the corporate banking of UniCredit and the supply chain and factoring business. And more or less that's it. In the last couple of years, we are investing in startup companies, and we are absolutely happy both to do this, and I'm very happy to be here with you today.
Excellent.
I've invested in companies and I run companies. My primary interest is investing in industrial enterprises, both locally, but increasingly also at a regional scale. That's what I'm here to talk about.
And bachelor number 3?
I'm sorry.
Oh.
Right. You're best on.
Hey, I'm Hristo from European Investment Fund office in Sofia, Bulgaria. I guess for many of you, or as we heard at the end of the previous panel, our role is to disappear from the venture capital market. But for the moment, we are the biggest institutional investor and public investor in Europe. Just to give you a perspective, venture capital fundraising market is actually getting quite dynamic in Europe. Last year, new funds raised in the VC segment are more than 6 billion euro, and our share is approximately 25%, so we have committed 1.5 billion euro in venture capital only. So, yeah, this is what we are.
Well, let me just piggyback off that for a second. So when you say our share, we're talking about Southeast Europe?
We wish.
Yeah.
But no.
No. When you say our share, what area
I mean,
are you
the European
defining?
Investment Fund, as an institutional investor, we are, as a public investor, we provide 30, 40, up to 50, or in the case of Bulgaria, in some cases, 99% of capital committed to early stage venture capital funds. So in Bulgaria, we are happy to be investor in Elvis Fund, as well as Nevek, Launch Hub, which are partnering this event, and 2 more early stage venture capital funds in Bulgaria that we support. Last year, we have committed 45 million euro in 3 equity funds in Bulgaria only.
Okay, so then when we talk about the Southeastern European region, define that a little bit for me. I mean, and does it really think of itself as a region, or is that more of an aspiration that it should think of itself, but it's still a lot of different parts that ought to be working together?
Okay, that's for me. It's not strictly geographic, in the sense that Greece is typically bundled with Mediterranean, Southern Europe. I personally define Southeast Europe as anything from Romania down to Albania. Now, former Yugoslavia has already the characteristics of a region, insofar as there are companies that are built and operate throughout that region. My motivation to seek a regional focus for everything that we do as a fund and as investors is that I believe that most of our companies do not have a chance of becoming competitive unless they can show that they can be competitive at a regional scale. So, and in addition, when you combine our markets, which are typically very small, 7 million here, 7 million people in Serbia, the rest of them are smaller, only Romania being the exception. Only when you can put them together, you can coherently claim that you are serving a market of 50 million, and then you are attractive for potential buyers of your business or of your goods. In addition, most of the companies that service, especially local markets, local consumption in other words, whether it's food or generally retail, they are very small. There's a lot of consolidation taking place there. Whatever serves the supply chain of Western organizations or Western companies also are pretty small. There's lots of scope for consolidation and for investment there. That's why I'd like to think of this place as a region.
But Filip, for you, do you also think regionally, or is the focus really Bulgaria?
Good point. But what is a region?
But this is my question, really. I mean,
And everybody got their answer. For us, as a bank, region, it's one region, the community of all the places in which we have local banks. Because it helps us build links, create interactions, promote companies, and do stuff like that. So for us, the entire thing that starts from Russia and finishes somewhere at the, well, it depends how we will consider Brexit, but still it's one region. And for sure, geographically, legally, and so on, there are lots of specifics. But right now, for us as a bank, this whole thing is one region, and we're happy to be operating in it. Investments we do not invest in companies that are local or in companies in which we are not certain that we can help them grow, link them to other markets, link them to other customers. So for us, entire Europe, especially that part in which we operate, is one region.
but and then is it enough when companies come to you and say, well, we're focused on the Southeast European region, or is it still, you prefer that they're really at least focused on all of Europe in terms of their aspiration or their market goals?
Well, it's company specific because we'll in the end come to the question, is Bulgaria a small market, which I believe not. But it depends by company. If you tell me I want to deal with Asia, or I want to be scaling in US, then maybe I'm not your investor. But if you want to do business in continental Europe, then we have a very strong talk. I don't know if I'm able to answer your question.
Yeah. So then, in terms of the amount of capital between the European level, the local investors who are in this region, is there still a feeling that there's a big shortfall in terms of the need, what entrepreneurs need really to get off the ground here?
I think there's no question about it. This is also part of the reason why I would advocate that we should think of our investments as regional, because most of the companies that we seek to invest in or that come to speak to us are typically very small. We're talking, in the best cases, 15 to 25 million euros of turnover. EBITDA levels that are less than 5 million euros. They do not attract interest from Western European investors, whether funds or corporate investors. So the challenge for people like us is to stand in this space, in this in-between space, between the companies showing and proving their business model and the stage where they become attractive for potential buyers, for potential exits. And in this space, we'd like to give them funding in order for them to grow. Typically, the investment will be 3 to 10 million euros in equity.
Now, in terms of, again, the European perspective, is there sort of a recognition of this region as a place where investors are looking, or is that still difficult even to just get people's attention focused on this region?
I think, in general, it depends on the stage of what stage of company development we are talking, but it's definitely a regional look at this. Normally in Europe, not only in this part of Europe, first round capital, startup capital comes from really local investors. But then if there is good traction, if the startups are firmly on the ground, actually the next round investors can come from everywhere, even from Silicon Valley. We see more cross-border activity, and we see more cross-border activity across Europe between various hubs of what we say venture capital ecosystems. It's not anymore just London or Berlin or Stockholm. There are more emerging ecosystems and hotspots in Europe. Paris tech scene is really amazing, it's growing. We see Zurich, Munich, Copenhagen. In Eastern Europe, we definitely have Sofia, but also the Baltics, Poland, etc. And actually, in our internal ranking at the European Investment Fund, we have defined top 20 emerging venture capital ecosystems in Europe, and Sofia is on the 19th place there. The other Eastern European destination is Vilnius in Lithuania. So these are two destinations, top 20 for us venture capital ecosystems in Europe, and they amount for 80% of early stage investments in Europe. And of course, the most developed hotspots like London, Berlin, or Paris now, actually a third of the investments there are cross-border and cross-nation, and they increasingly come including to Sofia and our region. I mean, I can just on the top of my mind give you an example, which is 1 month ago. It's not from Bulgaria, but in Romania, a local company, actually with first round investors last year from Seed Camp and Early Bird, local VC investors, just a month ago received a $40 million next round from Axel Capital directly. And we can give more examples even from Greece, from Turkey, also in Bulgaria. So it's definitely a region, and the future for us is it's going to be more cross-border, more regional look, specifically on the next level, or what we say is growth stage venture capital investments.
And then for any of you, I mean, when you're talking to entrepreneurs in the region, is there still a sales job on your part to convince them that they can stay here and get the access to the funding in some fashion that they need? Or are you finding that the instinct is still, if you're a young entrepreneur, well, the second step should be to move to a Berlin or a Paris or a London? Is that still a case that you're trying to make? Or do you feel like more people are willing to stick here and try to make it work from the Southeast?
Most potential entrepreneurs from the tech scene, they have very high ambitions. So I would argue, as a matter of fact, that when it comes to the tech scene, in most cases, their ambitions are higher or bigger than their capabilities. When it comes to the industrial investments, it's the other way around. People are generally unaware of how far they can reach, primarily because they have faced the hard reality of having to build a business and not being able to find sufficient financing for it, either from banks or from equity investors. And generally, people that have done this, that have gone a certain way, that have built their business up to 10, 15 million euros, they are very cautious about attracting potential investors or partners into their business, because they know that their capability to run the business on their own will be somehow limited. So there is a selling job to be made to the industrial companies. With the others, it's not so much selling, it's mostly telling cautionary tales about what it really entails to have partners such as us, the funds.
Looking at the government.
Yeah, can I jump in with a comment on this? We need to understand something, because we are totally different types of investors here. For us, for example, we prefer companies that would prefer to stay in this region. And that's come also from the nature of our institution. So if, for example, there is an investment opportunity and the company wants to be the next Angry Birds, maybe we are not your people. But if you would like to do something industrial in this part of the world, then we can help a lot. And in this regard, we are very close to what Elvin says. In inefficiencies-driven markets like ours, there is so huge potential to make money. I can talk like for hours about energy sector, healthcare, and we can go with agriculture, infrastructure, and so on and so forth. And as a matter of fact, we are really big markets, because the inefficiencies here, the number of opportunities is significantly bigger than in more developed markets. I've been doing business angeling in Italy, for example, and a couple of other countries. The potential of Eastern Europe on the industrial things is huge. Then going back again, fintech or IT and stuff like that, it's a bit different story, but also it's a bit different type of investment.
Yeah, it's interesting because you see some of those things being addressed in like France or Germany, but do you get the sense that those companies look at the Southeast region as just too small a market to focus in terms of when they're thinking about their expansion, and then that kind of leaves a gap for a local player to, I hate to say make a copycat service, but essentially solve a similar problem in a more regional way.
That will change.
But that's also the opportunity. You put together a presence in a few of these smaller markets, and then you have a real exit opportunity at multiples that approach Western European or American multiples. If you are simply a local champion, the largest player in Bulgaria or the largest player in Romania, then your multiple, your exit multiple, whether that is revenue or EBITDA, is simply not going to be attractive enough. We suffer from the handicap of being in Southeast Europe or in the Balkans even, to use it.
Yeah. Well, and I wanted to just start asking you a little bit about the government or the government's role in terms of tech and fiscal policy in terms of supporting these. Again, I live in France, and the government there has taken obviously a very strong role in trying to accelerate the tech ecosystem. We've seen other places like Portugal, Estonia, governments get involved in supporting funding, regulation reform. Is there a sense that regional governments here, the national governments in this region, are they involved? Do you want them to be more involved? Or is there a feeling that, I guess more from the Silicon Valley perspective, we'll just figure it out on our own and let the entrepreneurs do what they want to do?
It's not only local governments that understand that the digital industry and digital transformation is actually the name of the game in Europe. Actually, in some of the member states across Europe, digital economy contributes between 5 and 8% of GDP. This is an important figure, and actually is recognized by most of the governments. Even in our region, also from our perspective, as we work in cooperation with local governments, in our agenda this year is to establish or invest in more than 8 venture capital funds in Romania, Bulgaria, and Greece only. And these are early stage funds and basically early stage investing in Europe, which is still supported by public funding is growing, not only in our region, but in other regions.
But let me just clarify, that's the European Investment Fund then putting money into these more local
depends,
funds?
but also it's always in collaboration with local governments. It's a bit more complex than this. So there is a European policy supported also on a local public level. So we are not working independently from local authorities. What we see as a new trend in Europe, and it's actually, Filip is a very nice example that it also happens in Bulgaria. It's not only venture capital and early stage venture capital. Big corporates, traditional industries in Europe, they wake up for tech investments. If you see the amazing growth in early stage tech investing in Europe, last year it is around 14 billion euro, early stage investments in young technology companies. A bigger part of it now comes from traditional big corporates in Europe. And if you look at again, in European context, the largest traditional corporates by market cap, 2/3 of them have directly or indirectly invested in young technology companies. 1/3 have acquired young technology companies in the last 2 years. And this is a new big change in Europe, and we see like big banks in Bulgaria also getting into tech. This is changing the environment a lot, bringing more private capital into the game, and also kind of contributing also to the growth of the venture capital industry as such. So early stage investing is still supported mainly by public funding, but the growth stage venture capital is really coming from private sector now.
And I would like to drop a couple of comments here. Do you guys know, for example, that 40% of technologies of UniCredit are being implemented, piloted, and tested in Bulgaria? And this is not only our corporation doing so. There are at least 2 companies in this room which, if they don't make it wrong, will give them access to almost 90 million clients. And if we will be implementing and piloting the things here, okay, that will go to all the other banks in the group. And we're having this discussion with a couple of industrial associations, and as a matter of fact, we'll be forming even a corporate think tank, and it's a work in progress to transfer to Bulgaria the R&D of the continental European corporations, and we are doing this in a couple of industries. And this is a different way to do business. We are not Silicon Valley, we shouldn't be. And to answer your question, the environment here we compared to what place exactly? Because if we give for even one thing, do you know what is the cost of founding a startup company in Italy, let's say? Does anybody know? With student discount, 4.6 thousand euro for the first year, and then you pay another almost 1,000 euro every year for commercialista, which is the accounting and stuff like that. Do you know what is the cost of this in Sofia? Do you know what is the time to market to develop a new product in Bulgaria compared to France, Italy, Germany? And so on and so forth. And we should not neglect this. Because it is very easy to focus ourselves on the valley, to focus ourselves on, you know, chasing the next Google, Amazon, whoever. But doing so, we are missing a lot. Sorry for the long.
No, that's great. And on that note, I want to thank you guys for taking the time this afternoon, and thank you all for listening.